Welcome to my tutorial series where I take a asset all the way from concept art to a game-ready animated 3D model, which I'll be using in Unity, but you could use in Unreal Engine or whatever engine you prefer working in. So I'm covering a lot of different software, a lot of different disciplines, and I'm trying to give a sort of top-level overview where I discuss my experiences and try to give some tips and talk about pitfalls and so on. If you want to support these types of videos, you can find me on Patreon. The link is in the description. But yeah, time to dive into part 4, where we will be discussing mesh cleanup and fixing the meshes once you export them from Kodon. Okay, so the first thing you want to do with the exports that you brought into Blender from Kodon is to remesh them. This is due to Kodon using a sort of a cubic grid system for their meshes, and when you export them, the seams along these cube edges don't merge properly, so you're gonna end up with a mesh that sort of falls apart in a grid. But yeah, after remeshing, you wanna go ahead and decimate in order to bring them down to a level where you can actually edit them. And well, the only way to figure out how you want to do this is to check how much your system can handle. If you start using too many triangles in Blender, you're gonna have a bad time. So you wanna remesh things to a point where your system can handle it, as many triangles as possible, because a remesh is essentially a sort of uniform recreation of a mesh where all the triangles or quads or whatever are spaced evenly. They have the same size. This means you need a lot of them in order to keep all the fine details. But once you've done that, and again, depending on what your system can handle, just push it as far as you can. Once you've done that, you want to decimate them in order to bring them down to a level where you can work on them. And the Decimate Modifier is great because it essentially finds areas where all the triangles aren't really needed. So say a big flat area, you can represent that with 2 triangles or 5 million triangles. It's still gonna be a big flat area. So decimate as hard as you can, bring it down to a level where the details are kept intact while allowing you to actually work with the model. Once that is done, you can start modifying the model, and you see here I'm about to scale down the hands. As I talked about in my previous video, I tend to sculpt the hands and the feet and so on much bigger than they actually should be from an anatomy standpoint. So yeah, essentially when you figure out what your system can handle, start going in and fixing the model, making sure that the different parts are proportional, that the model looks good when you see the whole thing, that the angle of the legs preferably should be straight down. It's easier to rig them that way, and make sure that the knee is bending in the correct direction already in the mesh. Then again, this makes it easier for setting up the rig later on. Another set of tools in Blender that you want to use when cleaning up the meshes are the mesh cleanup tools, conveniently named. In particular, you want to use the delete loose and the generative dissolve. You can see here and there through the video how I'm doing this. And this is essentially Blender's way of going through a mesh and looking for problem areas where faces aren't formed properly, or you have a random vertex somewhere doing nothing useful. So make sure to do that to all your meshes as well. And as far as what your system can handle, I guess I could give you an example. Me, personally, I'm using a RTX 2080 graphics card with a AMD Ryzen 8 core processor and 32 gigabytes of RAM. And for me, I can handle around 2 to 4 million triangles in Kodon before it starts to be a bit stuttery. And well, anyone who's used VR know that's a bad time. And when I'm in Blender, I can handle probably around 10 times that, so 20, 30, 40 million triangles. But when I want to bring them down to a level where I can actually do something useful with them in edit mode, I need to bring them down to about the same triangle count as in Kodon, so a couple of million triangles. The part where I'm at, say, 20, 30 million triangles is only directly after the remesh, and well, the decimate comes directly after that, bringing it down again to a level where I can work with them. And well, you can see here how I'm making sure that the different meshes fit together properly, that the torso goes into the legs and so on. Again, not really important that these different parts merge properly in Kodon. You can correct that in this phase. Something else that I decided to do for this model, and I'm probably gonna keep doing that in the future, is that I only sculpted one of the hands. The hands can be a bit tricky to get right, and it takes a bit of time, so why make life hard for yourself? I just, in Blender here, I copy the hand that I sculpted and graft it onto the stump of the other arm. So, you know, that makes my life easier, and I tend to try and find ways of doing that. I don't think I'm showing it here in the video, but the way that I actually combine the hand with the torso is by using a Boolean modifier in Blender. And once that is done, I think I do another remesh and decimate. Again, doesn't really matter. I end up with something that works. If you're on a system that can handle less triangles, well, something that I already do is split the models I'm working into different parts. So if, say, I could handle a third of this, I would have, well, 3 times as many parts. And it's not really a problem in Kodon to sculpt on a part separately from another. So say just the head, or just the torso, or just the legs, or just the feet, and so on. It's again, the workflow I'm using, where I'm correcting the proportions and so on later in Blender, means it doesn't matter if the head is too big for the torso or the torso is too small for the legs or whatever. You can just fix that later on in Blender. So figure out your limits and split up the mesh in as many parts as you need. And yeah, that pretty much covers my whole workflow for cleaning up and correcting the meshes once they come out of Kodon. And it's a bit of work, it takes a bit of time, but the more times you do it, the quicker you're able to get it done. And as you figure out the limits of your system, you learn to, well, work proactively in a way that makes things easier for you. Alright, I also want to thank Mats for mentioning the subtitles. I had a lot of fun doing the weird little jokes with the subtitles, but as it seems Google can actually manage to figure out what I'm saying and add automated subtitles, I think I'm gonna skip the extra hours it takes me to create the subtitles myself. Yeah, I really wanted to have subtitles in. I have a good friend of mine is deaf, so yeah, she really appreciates it. But I check the other videos, and Google is pretty much perfect on the subtitles, so I'm gonna stick with that for now, and hopefully, again, save myself some work. And I also had a question from Spencer Hansen, and he asks, what is your dream computer setup if you don't have it already? And well, I mean, I have a pretty good computer already. I'm very happy and grateful that I managed to set up this system. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt to have a better graphics card. I would love to get my hands on a 3090 or something, but yeah, it's I can do everything I need right now, so I don't really feel the need to invest in a more powerful system. But sometime in the future, my dream computer, I guess, what I really lack right now is more storage space. I only have 2 terabytes. I'm using a couple of SSD hard drives, and when you're editing videos and so on, man, these take up a lot of space. When I'm recording an entire process like this, from concept art to all the stuff I'm doing in Blender and all the sculpting in Kodon and also on, it's I mean, it's like, what is it, 10-20 hours of video, and even if I'm only recording it at 1080p, it's still, holy crap, how the space that video takes up. I didn't really realize this before I started making my own videos, but yeah, more space would be really nice. Right now, I end up editing a video, and once I'm done, I delete all the source files. Just keep the result. Oh, right. You can see here how I'm working on the belt. I also ended up actually 3D modeling the belt buckle and the belt rather than sculpting them. With the level of detail I'm doing in Kodon, they ended up being kind of blobby and melting into the pants. So yeah, it works better doing those kind of things with hard surface modeling. I ended up using a shrink wrap modifier and a solidify modifier, so I could just sort of paint almost the belt around the pants. I also actually ended up exporting the pants back into Kodon and doing a second pass where I made sure the belt loops actually had a little more detail and made sure that the belt was covered by them. Same sort of thing for the teeth. In previous projects I've often sculpted the teeth, but I ended up with sort of messy meshes that were a bit tricky to work with and bake from and so on. So for this project I ended up just hard surface modeling the teeth, and it worked out really nicely, and the bakes were cleaner and so on. So I'm probably gonna move over to doing that for my other projects as well. Nails, on the other hand, they work great in sculpting, so I'm probably gonna keep doing nails and claws and so on in Kodon. That pretty much covers everything for the cleanup of the high poly meshes. So in the next video I'm gonna start unwrapping the high poly mesh. After that is the texturing in Substance Painter, and then I think I'm doing the low poly model before baking it, and well, then we have the rigging and the animation. So it's, yeah, this series is still has a couple of videos to go. But as usual, thanks so much for watching, and bye!